Hi, welcome to Chapter 9, Physical and Cognitive Development in Middle Childhood. In this chapter, we're going to look at physical changes, cognitive changes, schooling, and children with special needs. These are the objectives we'll be covering. So the first thing we're going to do is we're looking at children from ages 5 through 12. This is during their formal learning years or elementary school. And we're going to take a look at physical changes first. And this is from ages 6 through 12. General growth involves large muscle coordination. They actually grow 2 to 3 inches and add 6 pounds a year. They have increased large muscle coordination, better hand-eye coordination, and significant gains in fine motor control. Here's a nice little video here. How did you grow during middle childhood? And it also talks about the importance of physical fitness in grade school to teach the importance of exercise, of getting outside, not just staying inside watching video games. Next, let's look at gender differences. Girls tend to grow faster with the overall growth rate, slightly more fat and less muscle, better coordination skills. Boys tend to be faster and stronger. Girls by the age of 12, 94% of their adult height has been attained. Boys by the age of 12, 84% of their adult height has been attained. Okay, from 6 to 8 years of age, there's increases in sensory and motor cortex functions. This is linked to improvement in hand-eye coordination and fine motor skills. From 10 to 12 years of age, the frontal lobes and cerebral cortex add synapses. This is associated with gains in the child's logic and planning skills. There's better myelinization of the frontal lobes, and reticular formation are important. The ability to pay attention is essential to allow the child to take advantage of improvements in frontal lobe functions. This is also where they develop what's called selective attention. This is the ability to focus cognitive activity on important elements of problem or situation and then weed out the other distractors. Next are what's called the frontal lobes and reticular formation links start to improve. 12-year-olds start to develop selective focused attention. The associational area neurons, sensory motor and intellectual functions are linked. It contributes to increases in information processing speed. Kind of like when you get an upgrade in your computer. Next, spatial perception lateralization. This helps with activities such as map reading. Improvement in learning math concepts and problem solving happens at this stage. Spatial cognition, the child improves their ability to infer rules from and make predictions about movements of objects in space, which includes being able to understand the left and right orientation, being able to understand the difference between their left and my left. And this is affected by different visual experiences. Traumatic brain injury, that's where you have an injury to the head that results in diminished brain function, such as lost consciousness, confusion, or drowsiness among school-age children. Most of this happens by either motor vehicles or bicycles. And this is why it's important that a child wear a helmet. Rate and type of injury changes with age. Majority of children tend to recover fully. They tend to respond a little bit better than older people when they have brain injury. Next, asthma appears around ages 5 to 7. It's responsible for more than 11 million school absences each year in the United States. Education is the first offense, followed by daily medication. As children grow and their lung capacity increases, asthma attacks lessen. Half of children continue with problems throughout their life. The most serious long-term health risk of middle childhood is obesity. If you use what's called the body mass index or BMI, if they score between 85 to 95 percentile in BMI, that's considered overweight. Nearly 1 in 5 children are obese, which is the 95 percentile or higher. Severely obese is 99 percentile. This is also associated with adult obesity. So if they're overweight as a child, the longer they stay overweight, the higher chances they'll be obese as an adult. This requires special diets and increased lifestyle exercise to lose weight. This next chart, chart 9.1, shows the prevalence of obesity, where the BMI is over 95 percentile. It's increased dramatically in the United States over the past 50 years. And this source is from the NCHS 2007. The prevalence of obesity in the United States has grown at an alarming rate over the last 5 decades. This is figure 9.1, which talks about risks involved. So you could have physical risks with obesity, cardiovascular, sleep disorders, joint problems, diabetes, social personal risks like peer discrimination, teasing, social isolation. And then cognitive risks would be reduced rates of college attendance. During the school age years, children demonstrate improved grammar skills and pronunciation. They become skilled at managing finer points of grammar. They're able to engage in conversation with many ages. They increase their vocabulary, especially derived words. They usually increase from 5,000 to 10,000 words per year. They use different tenses to describe past experiences. They also add new vocabulary at a rate of 5,000 to 10,000 words. So I mentioned that already. Derived words are words that have basic root to which some prefix or suffix is added, such as happy or unwanted. Piaget's concrete operational stage talks about the child is able to think logically about concrete concepts, but they still have difficulty understanding abstract or hypothetical concepts. School-age children understand rules that govern physical reality. They distinguish between appearance and reality, and they utilize a set of powerful schemas. Here's an example of concrete operational thinking. What aspects of concrete operational thought do you find in this 5th grader's response to a hypothetical premise? If I became president, I would create a program called Houston 2020. Now, this would be called using inductive reasoning or inductive logic, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So, do you know what powerful schema school-age children use? One is called decentration, which is thinking that takes multiple variations into account. There's reversibility is ability to mentally undo some kind of physical or mental transformation. This can easily solve conservation tasks. Construction of schemes that enable children to think logically are inductive logic, and that's moving from personal experience to general principles. For example, this would involve observing, manipulating things that can be touched, cataloging, counting facts and figures. Deductive logic is a type of reasoning based on hypothetical premises that require predicting a specific outcome from a general principle. For instance, what would you do if you're president that uses deductive logic? Right? Because one has to imagine things that were not experienced. Okay. Horizontal decollage is applying new thinking to all kinds of problems. Conservation is ability to logically determine a certain quality remains the same despite adjustments. Remember when they showed conservation of mass and conservation of weight and conservation of volume? By the age of 7, they're able to understand conservation of mass. By 8, conservation of weight. By 9, conservation of volume. Let's see how children perform on tests of conservation. Figure 9.3, children got better in all 5 tasks over a 3-year period. What else do you see? In this classic longitudinal study, children were given the same set of concrete operational tasks 5 times, beginning in kindergarten and ending in 3rd grade. Next, concrete observations as rules for problem solving. Siegler took this a step farther. Found that cognitive development consists of acquiring a set of basic rules applied to broader ranges of problems. There's a movement from one rule to the next requires experience, and this approach is a cross between Piaget's theory and information processing theory. Figure 9.4, this balance scale is similar to what Siegler used in his experiment. Rule 1 is pre-operational rule, taking into account only one dimension. Rule 2 is a transitional rule where the child still judges on the basis of number, except when the same number of weights appear on each side. In that case, the child takes distance from the fulcrum into account. And then Rule 3 is concrete operational rule, where the child tries to take both distance and weight into account simultaneously. When the information is conflicting, the child simply guesses. Rule 4 is understanding the actual formula for calculating the combined effective weight and distance for each side of the balance. And that's leading to what's called formal abstract thinking. Processing efficiency is the ability to make efficient use of short-term capacity. For instance, when you learn your basic facts in math, that's using your processing efficiency. It's a major component of cognitive growth, increases speed of cognitive processing, changes validated with cross-cultural research. For instance, they say China and Japan does better at math because we use a calculator where they focus on processing efficiency. Okay, now automaticity is the ability to recall information from long-term memory without using short-term memory capacity. And this frees up your short-term memory for more complex processing. Again, elementary school children who have automized basic math facts learn complex computational skills more rapidly. So this is basically learned through practice. Practice your basic facts with your children. Next are executive processes. This is information processing skills, allowing a person to devise and carry out alternative strategies for remembering and problem solving. If you see table 9.2 for more information related to common information processing strategies used in remembering. The term metacognition is being able to think about thinking. For instance, if the teacher says, okay, let's talk about making a peanut butter jelly sandwich. What's the first thing I would do? Okay, I would go to the refrigerator and I would get the jelly, and then I would get peanut butter, and I would go to the bread basket and get some bread. And so metacognition is kind of walking a child through the stages of what you're thinking while you're doing it. Okay. Next are memory stages, mnemonic devices and stuff like that helps with learning. Now Micheline Chi, she studied expert chess players, found out that expert chess players can remember the placement of chess pieces on a board more quickly and accurately than novice players can, even when the experts were children and the novices were adults. This is table 9.2. It talks about common information processing strategies like rehearsal, organization, or grouping ideas. Sometimes you use like a mental map. Elaboration, mnemonic devices where you use one letter from each word, like every good boy does fine as a mnemonic. Systematic searching, scanning for information, all those things help. Now, every society seeks ways of teaching children the skills needed for adulthood. In the United States, formal education was one of the most important influences on the cognitive development of middle childhood. In schooling, literacy is the ability to read and write. At an early age, phonological awareness increases. Readers benefit from specific instruction. Automaticity of identifying sound, symbol, combinations helps. Balanced approach includes guided reading. This would be where the teacher reads some and the student reads some. And the student follows along while the teacher's reading or another student's reading. Now, poor readers tend to have problems with sound-letter combinations. They benefit from highly specific phonics approaches. So the problem is the students spend so much time sounding out the word that they're losing the comprehension of what's being said. They may need multiple teaching approaches to help catch up. Now, second language learners, there's what's called LEP, Limited English Proficient. They have a limited ability to read, write, or even understand English. Some participate in what's called bilingual education, and that's where instruction is given in 2 languages. Now, English as a second language program, or it's now referred to as ELL, children spend part of the day in classes to learn English. Using a home component also helps. This helps support the children's home language and culture. It provides a transition to English-only classrooms. The number of school-age children who speak a language other than English has increased to 2.5 million in 1991 to 11 million in 2009, which averages about 10% of the school population. Program services provided are bilingual education, ESL, homeschool programs. Here's a nice little video on bilingual classrooms. Next, standardized tests is an achievement test. It's designed to assess specific information learned in school. Some critics suggest that portfolios of children's schoolwork are a better indicator of actual school learning. So you have your achievement tests, which is a paper and pencil intelligence test. They're usually required by most U.S. school districts. They often result in misclassification of minority students because a lot of the items are strongly correlated with achievement test scores. Yes or no, IQ tests should be placed as a primary or only criteria for placing children in educational programs. If this were a class, we would discuss it. But I would say we need a balance. Standardized tests, achievement tests, balance with portfolios and other projects. Not just use multiple guess form. Howard Gardner talks about multiple intelligence. In other words, there's a lot. We have intuitively appealing, but the theory has little empirical support. But there's more than one type of intelligence. Triarchic theory, Robert Sternberg talks about contextual intelligence, experiential intelligence, and componential intelligence. Emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman talks about children's control over emotions in early childhood is strongly related to academic achievement. Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence talks about linguistic intelligence, which is using language effectively, logical intelligence, which is using mathematical numbers and problem solving, musical intelligence, spatial intelligence, body kinesthetic intelligence, being able to use your body in a coordinated way, a naturalist intelligence, understanding plants and animals, interpersonal intelligence, which is getting along with others, intrapersonal intelligence, which is understanding yourself. So all those things are real important, which is not things that you can measure by a standardized test. IQ testing in schools, the big question is, should IQ tests be used routinely to group elementary school students for instruction? If you say no, it's because IQ tests do not measure all facets of relevant functioning. They may create what's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. Tests are often culturally biased. There is such thing as culturally reduced tests, however, I don't think they're quite that culturally reduced. People may say yes to this, may push IQ testing aids to qualify for special classes. They're more reliable than teachers' raters or other alternatives. So what do you think? For instance, my son is selecting classes for high school. whether he gets into an honors class. It's a teacher's recommendation, but they also require that the student be earning an A or B in the class. But the counselor also does look at test scores. If they don't score higher than the 50 percentile, a lot of times a child will not be put into an honors level class. If they scored low because of cultural reasons, then that child would be deprived of their opportunity to get into an honors level class. Okay, let's look at schooling, sex differences in schooling. There's no consistent differences between boys and girls on total IQ or achievement test scores. Girls perform slightly better on verbal tasks. Boys perform slightly better on numerical reasoning. Now, don't get all crazy saying that, guys are better at math. Math it's about, learning. Nobody's born knowing math, and it's a matter of practicing and making it happen. Differences are shaped by environmental factors mostly, usually your parents' educational level, teacher assumptions about skills. Children internalize the beliefs of others and make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. By high school, differences in standardized tests are pretty apparent. Here's a nice little video on boys in crisis. They're just saying boys are starting to perform a lot lower than what girls are doing. And it might be because of their peer group not valuing school, where a girl tends to get more popular when they grow in intelligence. Boys tend to get less popular when they're seen as intelligent. It's kind of a double standard. Let's talk about ethnic differences. Problems associated with economic status, access to prenatal care, family stability. This all affects a child's performance in school. Style differences. There's what's called analytic type learning, and this is where people define learning goals and follow orderly steps to reach them. This is more step-by-step learning the details, and relational learning has to do with focusing attention on the big picture instead of individual bits of information. Higher percentage of Asian American and European American children are analytic. We're more minority African American, Hispanic, and Native American children tend to come across as relational in their type of learning. So a lack of good cultural fit may cause school problems. Let's look at cross-cultural differences in achievement. U.S. children are significantly behind their industrialized nation peers in math and science. There's underlying cognitive processes that are similar. North American parents emphasize innate ability. In other words, you're smart because it's in your genes. Where Asians tend to emphasize hard work. So the teaching methods may vary. Asian teachers may emphasize master lessons around a single theme. Asians tend to emphasize computational fluency, where Americans may undermine intrinsic motivation by poor use of reward systems. Asian teachers have devised particularly effective modes of teaching math and sciences. So Americans tend to spend less time on one topic, often shifting from one concept to the next. So there's some differences in styles. Stereotype threat is the subtle sense of pressure members of a particular group feel when they're attempting to perform well and in which their group is characterized by a negative stereotype. For instance, they can influence performance on cognitive tests. Usually the results have greater impact on adults and children. So there's the importance of stereotype threat might be misinterpreted. Ethnic group differences may or may not disappear. So we have a discussion of group differences in intelligence contributes to racial prejudice. Do you think society would be better off if researchers stop trying to discover the causes for them? How might parents, teachers moderate the effects of the stereotype threat on children's test performance? I guess the key is not to throw these stereotypes out, and because it could affect how a person perceives by using what's called self-fulfilling prophecy. If somebody says I'm going to do bad on the test, I'm going to do bad on the test. Children with special needs. There's something called learning disabilities. This is where a child has difficulty mastering a specific academic skill, most often in reading or writing or in math, despite processing normal intelligence and no physical or sensory handicaps. So this makes up 13% of all children receive special education. And there's a list of disabilities. One is the learning disabilities, and this would be difficulty in mastering a specific academic skill. And there's also what's called dyslexia, which is a skill deficit specific to people to reading. May include difficulty in understanding the sound and structure of language. A lot of times they switch letters around. Teaching approaches. There's what's called reciprocal teaching, which is working in pairs and have students work together. And then inclusion is where the kid with a disability spends at least part of the day together in regular classrooms. They may have a co-teacher with a special ed certification in the class assisting. Or the other one is called pull-out testing, and that's where the special ed teacher pulls a kid out and has them in a self-contained classroom. If a child is more than 2 years behind other children in their grade, the child's classified as learning disabled. Causes are neurological differences, functional differences, serotonin function is impaired. Children born at least 24 to 31 weeks gestation are 4 to 6 times more likely to have what's called ADHD. This requires more sensory stimulation than peers. What causes it? There's cultural factors. A lot of times people outside the United States are not diagnosed for ADHD. Parents lose confidence in their abilities and become permissive or overly harsh. This may be helped by parental training programs that helps regain a sense of control, to receive daily feedback from schools, like a point card, reinforce specific rules. Sometimes the doctor may prescribe medication like Ritalin, which may or may not, improve their class behavior. Homeschooling. About 2.4% of U.S. children are homeschooled. 21% of homeschooled children have special learning needs. 16% have mental or physical challenges. However, they score in the top 20% of all academic subjects. Critique on this is that most homeschool teachers or families, households, are upper income, white, and college educated. So that also considers the context from which a child is homeschooled. Now, research reveals more about who homeschools are than the effects of homeschool. So what factors would motivate you to consider homeschooling for your child? What are some reasons that might make you reluctant to do so? Now, if you're discussing homeschooling with a classmate who cited research showing that homeschoolers get higher achievement test scores than children who are enrolled in public school, how would you explain the shortcomings of such research? And I shared that about how most families in homeschool are white and college educated and higher income. So those are other factors you got to consider as well. Well, this concludes this unit. Have a good week.